Hello everyone, Exilium here, and today we're going to take a look at the last member that we currently have available for the burn team that I will be replacing as soon as I can with Cinerusi, just because her heals really aren't up to par of what you really need to do a lot of the harder content, at least at this point. We'll kind of have to see what happens once we start getting closer to max level and fighting max level enemies. But right now, if you are at the point where you're kind of in the mid 30s, if you're doing the combat simulations, the boss fights, you may be able to get to tier 6 on the boss fight this week. I'm currently there. It's the one I needed to beat right now to get to the next tier. The big thing is these has 2 bosses, so you have to beat a level 40 boss and a level 45 boss. And you cannot use the same group or the same people on each boss. And so at this point, you're starting to have to form 2 teams. And this is where you have to start figuring out how to beat stuff without having the overpowered shields that comes from Suomi and in being able to take the hits. And so for the burn team, I have a really good setup on the burn team. So they're the group that I'm going to try and get that first boss down without those overpowered shields. And so she is going to be the one that's going to be able to somehow keep them alive. I'll actually be streaming that come tomorrow once I get off work. But let's go ahead and take a look at her kit because she's more support, less heal. Her heal's not near as good as I would want. But she does have a lot of support capabilities she can have in the burn team. So let's go ahead and first take a look at her passive here. All right, so for her passive over here, the first thing you'll see here is when an enemy unit within range receives targeted damage from an allied unit, prioritizes performing 1 instance of action support. So just like pretty much everybody in the burn teams, she does have action support in her kit. Now she's not very big attack, but she does do some damage, which is always going to be helpful to the team. And then dealing physical damage equal to 80% of the attack, 3 points of stability damage to the enemy, and applies Blazing Assault to the ally who did that attack, which gives them a 15% increased attack. And it gives it to them for 2 turns. This can only be triggered once per turn. And when under the effects of heat recovery, stability damage is increased by 1 point. At the end of action, grants 1 point of Confectance Index for each burn buff. And so that's going to be the big thing, is she can get her Confectance Index pretty easily just by being under the effects of burn buffs, which she has enough to kind of keep those coming in. And as we see with her skills, some of them cost Confectance versus cooldown that you might want to be using more often than not. Now we take a look at her basic attack. It's just your typical basic attack, 3 stability damage, 6 tiles, 80% damage. Now we take a look at favorable cycle here. This one's Confectance cost of 2, and so stability damage 2. So this one selects 1 enemy target within 6 tiles, deal physical damage equal to 75%, applies 2 stacks of flammable. And so flammable makes it so when they take burn damage, it increases the stability damage taken by 2 points, and the attacker recovers 2 points stability damage. When this happens, 1 stack is consumed of those 2, and so after 2 allies basically attack with burn attacks, you'll go through those 2 stacks. And then it applies Overburn, so that is one thing. She can apply Overburn, and this is one of the ways that she can do it. It lasts for 1 turn, but this will trigger Sharkri and her own action support, which then can also trigger Jeonju. If under the effect of 2 or more burn buffs, which she generally will be, perform an additional attack on the original target, dealing burn damage equal to 75% attack and 2 stability damage. And so this alongside Sharkri is going to be really good for melting their stability down, because she's just adding more ways to knock it down, and then Sharkri is just going to come in and do her big hits. So that's really nice right there, and it uses Confectance cost rather than cooldown, and because she's going to be under burn buffs fairly often, this is something you could spam. Now, she is our healer though, and if you've done that boss enough times, you know he pretty much hits everybody on your team, and if you're doing it a little bit under leveled like I am, those hits are starting to hurt now in the 40s. And so this is the main skill on her second one, Comprehensive Rescue, that if you're in a fight where you're constantly taking hits, I feel like I'm going to have to constantly spam this one. Luckily, this one also has a Confectance cost of 2 as well, so you can use this every turn if you can keep that Confectance cost up. This is her heal. And so this one selects 1 allied units within 6 tiles, restoring HP equal to 130% of her attack, plus 2 points of stability index, and applying heat recovery. Heat recovery is before being attacked, they will recover 30% of their HP and inflicts 2 points of stability damage. 30% of the inflictor's attack, recovers 2 points of stability, and randomly cleanses 1 buff from the attacker. This can be triggered once and it's considered a burn buff. If the target's HP is fully restored after healing, they get Blazing Assault, which is that 15% increase to damage. That lasts for 2 turns. And the user also gains the same buff. And so this one's basically, I'm spamming this one, and you'll see with some of her fixed keys, there's other little benefits you can get from this as well when you're healing. So that is going to be the main one for the boss, just because you're having to keep your team alive. Then when you take a look at her ultimate here, this one actually has a cooldown versus using the Confectance points. And so this one has a stability damage of 5. It gives her heat recovery, and if you remember, heat recovery it triggers parts of her passive. So that's where she can this can self-heal herself. So whenever she takes damage, that's usually when I'm going to cast the ultimate, because heat recovery is going to make it where she can heal herself. So that way you can do that. It gives her this Blazing Assault 15%. It lasts for 2 turns. That right there gives her the 2 burn buffs she needs to trigger other parts of her kit. And then you'll select one enemy target within 6 tiles and deal burn damage equal to 160% attack to it. And so this one is just basically going to be a little bit of a heal for her with heat recovery, and it gets her those 2 burn buffs to trigger other parts of her passives. And so we have that one. And so that's kind of her entire kit there. As you can see, she doesn't have much in terms of healing, but she does have that support that helps the burn side of things quite well. Now when we take a look at her neural helix here, and over here, when you look at it, you have the first fixed key up here, win-win partnership. When healing an allied target other than the user, applies a random buff to them and the user. And so this is just a way, this was a really, really good one, because especially on that boss fight, since I'm going to be spamming her heal, this one's going to be triggering every turn, and it's going to give a random buff to both her and the user. So nice one right there. I pretty much would have that one all the time, because if you're using her, she's pretty much probably going to be your healer. I don't think you're going to want to bring another healer alongside with her, at least currently. And then you have the other fixed key here, Equivalent Exchange. When using Favorable Cycle, for each kill made, increases the maximum number of action support uses this turn by 1. So that's her other skill there. If she gets a kill with it, it makes it where she can trigger her action support more than once. I could see this one being situational. It's going to... We can maybe see this coming in later when we do the other mode, the other endgame mode, which if you look is under Campaign, Combat Simulation. So the peak value assessments, I believe you start needing multiple teams towards the end here. If you can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong there, but I believe you're going to need multiple teams in that area, and that might be where you're going more for kills, because there's going to be multiple enemies to kill, and so that key may be more useful there versus in a boss, where this one's not as useful because you're not going to be constantly triggering kills to increase that action support. And then you have the fixed key in the bottom here on the second level, Mutual Benefit. When using Comprehensive Rescue, the user gains the same buffs, and so that is her skill right here, or this one right here. She gains those same buffs, and that's very important because heat recovery triggers parts of her passive. So when you look at her passive, stability damage is increased by 1 point, so it makes it a little bit easier to do some more stability damage there. So you're going to want to have this just so she gets those buffs. To me, these two right here are like must-haves on her. The top one up here, after dealing burn damage, restores HP equal to 10% of the damage and 1 point of stability index. Depending on how difficult this boss is going to be, if I'm even getting close to beating him, this may be something I take just to give her a little bit of extra heal there to keep her alive while she's trying to heal her teammates. But other than that, I don't see as much value in this in the future, especially maybe if you're starting using her at higher levels in the endgame content. We take a look at this one, a Friendship Gift. When applying burn buff, additionally cleanses 1 debuff. So this is going to be a good one for getting doing cleanses on your team. And since you're always buffing them when you're healing them, this is basically making it an additional cleanse there. So that is a nice one to take on her as a healer. And then discount guide, if the user, if she possesses a heat recovery at the end of action, gains 1 point of confectance index. And so this is going to be one that's going to ensure you'll be able to spam your heal skill, because that's going to, alongside this other one here, that's going to ensure that she's always getting enough confectance index points to keep spamming it. And then the last one here, the common key, a health boost to 3. And then when applying a burn buff, there is a 50% chance to apply an additional buff to the target for 1 turn. And so this one's just a nice little one that get additional buffs on your team. I could see this one being useful. So even if you're done using her in the future, I could see this being a useful key to put on, say, the new burn healer we'll be having. And so you put this on her, and now she can have additional buffs when she heals. And so that is her neural helix. So let's go ahead and take a look at what she gets with her dupes. Right, in her dupes here, so you can see I've already had one on here. So on the first one, apply overburn for 1 turn after the first attack for favorable cycle. So when I read off the skill, that was actually, when I read this overburn is actually her first dupe. This does not exist until you get her first dupe. So this is quite important for Sharkly, so that's a really nice buff, just being able to do overburn, because it's the main debuff you want for burn teams. So a nice good little one there. Segment 2, when under the effects of Blazing Assault, increases stability damage by 1 point. Being able to break enemies is important. The more the better. So even if it's just 1 point, it's always better to do a little bit more. The third one here, if phase weakness is exploited, increases damage, so just a damage increase with the alt there. Passion for shopping, the maximum amount of times that action support can trigger increases by 1. To me, this is a big one. Action support, a lot of what the burn team is about is everybody just spamming action supports together. You have Jean-Ju doing it, Sharkly doing it, and now she can do it another additional time. So it's just an additional attack coming from her. Segment 5 here, if the target's HP is fully restored after healing, that wasn't before additionally. So this one additionally restores 2 points of the stability index. So if we already know they were getting restored an additional stability index, this one just adds an additional 2 on top of that with this segment. And then the last one, when attacking targets with overburn, increases critical hit rate by 100%. If you have this one, she's going to be, if you're doing things correctly, she should be basically critting 100% of the time on every enemy. And so this can be a massive increase to her damage as well as her heal, because with this one, when it comes to building her and getting her attachments, you can pretty much completely ignore crit rate. And so you're more going to want to target your attack, crit damage, and then health slash defense to keep her alive more. And so that's a nice little one there for her damage. And that is Ksenia. So she is a healer that can do what's needed for the burn team, and I've only just now started using her, so I'm getting that feel of how good she can do. It's really hard to get a good feel because these bosses I am under leveled for at this point. And a lot of the content I've been just using my SSRs that I've fully invested in to push through nice and easy. But at this point, now that I'm needing 2 teams, I'm now having to invest in my SRs. And then I'm also having to start using SR weapons because I don't have all the stuff for them. I don't have their neural helixes fully complete. So even though I'm not really able to get a full feel for her yet and how good she's capable of until I really get her more invested. But it definitely, at this current point, I feel like Cinerusi is still, to me, a must-pull of the burn team, just because she just doesn't have much heal in her kit. Now, I haven't played the CN version. I don't know how much healing is needed when you have you have the best of the best attachments on your units at max level. So there's always that. Maybe heals aren't as important on the end game, and so she's good enough. But if you want to invest in the burn and make them top notch, Cinerusi will definitely be a must pick up to replace her in the future. But I will be streaming tomorrow some attempts on that boss fight, and so I will be using her alongside Krolik and Sharkfree if everyone wants to see them in action. But yeah, that is Ksenia. And if you like my content, if you could like, comment, and subscribe, it really helps. I'm almost at 900, so I'm rapidly approaching that 1,000 mark. But yeah, thanks for watching.